Good morning. 7:30 here in the morning, and I'm going to continue reading the book on the yoga of relationships by Isabella Viglietti, also known as Sundari. So this is chapter 4, and that's on obstacles to love relationships, seeking the perfect mate. At age 2, my granddaughter knew how to flirt. Who taught her? Nobody. We come in primed for love. The boy-girl game is completely natural. Looking for a missing half just after puberty, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, we enter the dating game in search of the perfect mate. She is motivated by the same spiritual emptiness, however. Even if we have compatible likes and dislikes, the fabled Mr. or Mrs. Right cannot provide the love we need to give to ourselves. Fully pressurized by society's impossible expectations from birth to death, we are conditioned to the expectation that family and others are supposed to make us happy, take care of us, stimulate and excite us in special ways, too numerous to mention. We seldom examine the truth that placing the onus of happiness outside of us never works in the long term. While I can take appropriate action to get what I want, I'm not in control of love objects or the results of my actions, which is the definition of anxiety. As soon as we find our soulmates, we worry about losing them. Invariably, our relationships fail to deliver what we think they should, causing unnecessary heartache. If we don't resolve the relationship issue and hang on to our story of love's joys and miseries, we are qualified to become charter members of the Scar clan, transferring our unmet desires from one relationship to another. Or we give up on love and become love refugees, ignorant of life's three essential factors. Life's three essential factors. And they are one, my psychological self, two, the self with the big S, myself with the big S, and three, the Dharma field, the field of life, the three essential factors. Blame is perhaps the biggest obstacle in dualistic, object oriented relationships, which are based on the idea that the love object is responsible for any relationship misery, never me. Blame gives me the moral high ground because I can claim victim status and cast my partner as the victimizer. Blame is caused by lack of knowledge of my material psychological self, the whole and complete spiritual self, and the lack of appreciation of the moral laws operating in life, the field of existence. How do these three factors relate to relationships? Here we go. Number one, my material and psychological self. If we're going to sincerely address the emotional side of our personalities, which, sad to say, is often the only developed side, we need to understand the consequences of the deluding power of dependence on objects for happiness. Hard as it is to admit, the problems we encounter in relationships are always about our stuff, never the love object stuff. As far as you refuse to accept responsibility for your contribution to the conflict, you will never enjoy satisfying relationships. But how can you take responsibility if you don't know who you are? Perhaps the best example of a perfect sense of self-denial is the current American president, who's never responsible for the ills that befall him. Obviously, the solution is self-examination. But how can you examine yourself, big S, if you don't know that you have one? Fortunately, I'm not writing this book for the president and his ilk, but for reasonably mature individuals with a modicum of self awareness and a desire to understand how their minds work. How can you understand your mind if you think you are your mind? The solution never comes from the level of the problem itself, because while I may be reasonably objective about others' problems, I'm rarely as objective as I think about my own. I will always have a reason that I'm not the problem, even if I can't blame you. Conditional and unconditional love. Before we can develop successful love relationships, we should have a clear idea of the consequences of conditional love, because the uncomfortable feelings and emotions that confront us in special love relationships are a neon sign advertising a flawed understanding of ourselves and the world. If we are going to haul our feelings and emotions out of the ages and present a pure heart to our loved ones, we need to be mindful of the distinction between conditional and unconditional love. Wholeness equals love. In the first place, I would not need a special love relationship if I were already happy. When I'm whole, I feel only love and I am happy. Therefore, wholeness equals love equals happiness. Conversely, when I feel incomplete, I crave love and feel wretched. Tormented by the joyful memory of love, I long to be whole again. Because I'm cut off, I blame myself and feel guilty, a nasty feeling that spawns a raft of negative emotions, not the least of which is self loathing. To compensate and reconnect to my most important part, the self, I unconsciously project love onto someone else and invest my love object with godlike qualities to make up for things I believe are lacking in myself. Because ever changing special needs are the basis for conditional love, keeping the illusion alive for extended periods is virtually impossible. Additionally, my relationship to my needs is always changing. To make matters worse, the love object's special needs and relationship to his or her special needs is also always changing. When I'm sure my love object has failed me, I become disillusioned and bitter, and none the wiser, more than likely set out to find a more cooperative victim. Why love fools me. Whether we are engaged in self inquiry or not, the belief that we need someone to make us happy needs to be resolved if we truly want freedom from dependence on objects for happiness. Why is access to the unlimited, unconditional reservoir of love that I am seemingly dependent on a fickle object? Because the erroneous belief that I need love extroverts my mind to such a degree that I do not realize what is happening when I fall in love. The more I'm deprived of it, the more I desire it. And the more I desire it, the thicker the wall becomes. When Cupid shoots his arrow, the object magically appears in front of me, and I fall in love, which is just my desire reaching critical mass. The dam collapses, and the ocean of high voltage love floods into my mind, overwhelming it with happiness. And it feels fantastic. I'm on cloud nine, beside myself with joy. Every part of me feels alive, vital. Is it any wonder I innocently associate my happiness with you, the beloved other? I'm so happy. I not only love you, I love me for being in love. And the world, which heretofore was such a dark, threatening place, does not menace me anymore. I want to hug everyone I meet. I'm in love, with life itself, at least for a while. Sadly, without knowing who I am, I attribute this feeling to the object instead of to its real source, the self, me. And when it ends, which it always does, I mourn the loss and desperately chase another object or experience to get it back. I become a heartbroken, unrequited, jilted lover singing the romantic song of duality. La douleur exquise, as the French say. A hangover from childhood. Maturation, a process of self-reliance, should gradually relieve us the expectation of support that we are entitled to as children. Instead of weaning us, our wealthy societies pander to our needy inner child, keeping it alive long past its sell-out date. The economy needs needy people. In societies such as those in India and some indigenous people, which are composed of extended, not nuclear families, there are no teenagers, only young adults. But Western society encourages us to replace our missing parents with a codependent with a codependent other, who is assigned the impossible task of making us happy. If we are unsuccessful in finding that significant other, in lieu of a lover, we shop an endless supermarket of costly stuff based or irrational emotion based identities. Sorry, I didn't get it. So Western society encourages us to replace our missing parents with a codependent other who is assigned the impossible task of making us happy. Anyway, that's what it's about. The road to hell, however, is paved with noble ideas and good intentions. Life deals all the cards, our circumstances and tendencies. No one else can take care of my needs and make me happy, because happiness comes from remaining true to my unborn nature. To be fulfilled, I need to work out the karma standing in my account, nobody else's. If you try to fix me, you will soon understand the saying that no good deed goes unpunished. If you take care of my karma, we both suffer. You for not doing your duty, and me for not doing mine. Yes, you are free to want what you want, but you will suffer anxiety if your mind is not free of the expectations of the result of what you want. Once you act, expectations are counterproductive because actions, not expectations, produce results. Performance anxiety may so agitate the mind that you don't act in an appropriate and timely way, which compromises the result and makes you unaware of life's beauty. Not to mention that the burden of your expectations wears you down and causes resentments, resignation, and disappointment, which does not endear you to anyone, much less yourself. Wanting itself is the problem. The upside always cancels the downside. You don't gain the upper hand by having a relationship or not having a relationship. Wanting makes us blind to the fact that wanting itself is the problem. An uncomfortable truth it is, Wanting does not stop when we get what we want. Here are a few sobering thoughts that should make us wonder why we ever want anything. God punishes you by giving what you want. That's a quote. And beware of what you want. You might just get it. A Course in Miracles says, from what you want, God won't save you. Or my personal favorite, there are two ways to be unhappy: not getting what you want and getting what you want. So someone who wants to be happy must try to solve the problem of wanting by inquiring into the one who wants what it wants the way it wants it. Worldly people believe that getting what they want equals happiness. No amount of evidence to the contrary seems to convince them that this is not true. They are incapable of examining the facts objectively. There's nothing wrong with relationships, but there's nothing inherently right with them either. For freedom from dependence on relationships, we need to consider the downside of this desire carefully and logically. If we go into a relationship focused only on the upside, we are asking for a bruising. Desire is a natural part of life and impossible to eradicate. If you're alive, you desire something, even if only to live. And not all desires are contrary to relationships and peace of mind. Desire itself is not the problem. The problem is the person in you who cannot not act on gratuitous desires. That wanting person needs to be quarantined or renounced. Have your relationships, but know that they won't solve your problem because you are the problem. You want things a certain way, but the fact is that life does not care how or whether you get what you want. It's going to give or take what it wants to give or take, whether we like it or not. We consult the stars or quasi spiritual modalities because we want to know what life is going to send our way. We want to get the edge, and we try to control or read the mind of God. But there is no edge. So if we want to enjoy our time in this world, we need to be ready to take disappointment as a gift and acknowledge the pain behind pleasure. There is no permanent nirvana here. This world has always been, and will always be a mixed bag. If you ask objects of this world to fulfill you, be prepared to suffer. Or investigate the world and see it the way it is. Do you really need what it offers? If you can see that you don't, you can enjoy the world for the wonder that it is, without fear. You can even keep your preferences if you're okay when they are not met. What we have said so far is in line with spiritual science. The cause of unhappiness is the belief that I am a needy, wanting creature, not the whole and complete being that the Creator made me. And the desire to love and be loved generates an incessant stream of binding emotions, both positive and negative. Vedanta defines freedom as freedom from the one who desires and wants. The wanter is everyone's problem until self knowledge negates it. It is all a question of dependence. If you depend on the world or on others to make you happy, beware. So that was the first section of the three important and essential factors: the material or psychological self. So now number two, myself with a capital S. In this very important section, we explain why you are not the small self, why you can only be non-dual consciousness love, the self with a capital S, and why relationships don't work if you are unaware of their seeming differences. I once heard a story told by a woman involved with an organization helping to save refugees from a war-torn country who had lost everything and survived unimaginable atrocities. When asked about their concerns about the future, most of these desperate people said that their primary concern was not what lay ahead or for homes, but for the boy or girl, the husband, the wife, the child in the other boat, or the one that they left behind. When life strips all else away, love is all that matters. A line in a song some years back more or less sums this up. We're only the ones we love. A difficult concept. What most of us don't realize is that we only love others for the sake of the self, whose nature is love, never for the benefit of the other, although the illusion of duality cleverly convinces us that we do. When I love someone or something, it is the love in the person that I love, not the body and the mind, which merely reflect love. I do not know that when I contact an object, I'm only contacting myself. Love, the ever present, never changing innermost self, is prior to all objects and does not need the presence of an object to know or love itself. In rare silent moments alone, when the mind is still enough and reasonably free of fear and desires, we feel the deep intimacy of the self. How full, satisfying, and good it is not to need anyone. This eternal feeling is always present as my very existence, but is usually covered up by likes and dislikes, fears and desires. The full, whole, and formless love that we are, however, loves to love itself in all forms, because all forms are its offspring. In case I lost you, let me explain. The idea that there's only one self is radical because the information we get through our senses doesn't confirm it. If you carefully follow this experience-based logic, however, you will understand. Everyone knows that they exist and that they are conscious. You cannot say you exist unless you know you exist, and you cannot know you exist unless you are conscious, nor can you know you exist unless you exist. So your existence and your consciousness are non-different. Everyone exists and is conscious. The next question. Is your existence consciousness a property of your body, or does your body borrow its existence consciousness? When you say I am, you probably think that your existence consciousness belongs to the body. To say probably is not true. You definitely believe it because you don't want to die. But ask yourself, does existence die? If it dies, it would have to be born. But when was existence born? There's no evidence that existence was ever born. There's plenty of evidence that the body was born. So if you are the body, your fear of death is justified. But is this true? Am I the body? I'm not the body because the body is an object known to me. This me is my existent, conscious, ever-present self. Now ask yourself, what am I doing right now to exist and be conscious? The answer is nothing. Existing is not something you do, it is what you are. Being conscious is not something you do, it is what you are. If your body was creating existence consciousness, it would disappear when your body dies. But it doesn't. Now tell me, when you're not experiencing I am, you will say, I was not experiencing it before I was born, nor will I experience it when I die. But why is this not true? Because there's no evidence whatsoever that you, existence consciousness, were not present before the body appeared as an object in you. And if you contend that it is true, then it would only be true if you were there to witness the birth of the body, which you couldn't have witnessed if you were the body. The body is an inert food tube. It doesn't witness anything. It doesn't know me, just like my reflection in a mirror doesn't see me. I see it. It is the self, the witness of the body, that is always present in every conscious being as the universal, ever experienced I. So what's love got to do with it? Everything, it turns out, because your I am is love. Your existence is love. How does that work? You may desire a new car, house, or a new lover. I may desire a new boat, a trip to Indonesia, and a divorce from my husband. Yes, the objects we desire or fear are different, but is my feeling of desire itself different from yours? No, it isn't. Just as when I say I exist, you know what it means to exist. When I say I want, you immediately know what I'm talking about, because you experience exactly the same feeling, because desire is non dual. Similarly, when you say I am or I want, you also say I love. When you say I love, I don't interrupt you and ask what I love means, because I too love certain things. I only have a doubt about the object that the love centers on: my husband, lover, body, job, house, whatever it is. What does it mean to say I am love? What does it mean to say that existence, consciousness, the I am, is love? It means that I am a partless whole. Nothing substantial can be added to existence. If it could, we would have names for the other existences from which existence could borrow things, or for existences that could subtract things. But I don't shrink or grow. I'm always the same. If consciousness changed, I wouldn't know what it means to say I know. Everyone knows what knowing is, because knowing is the essence of the self. If I'm a partless whole, I can't gain or lose anything, which means I'm free of fear and desire. When I'm free of fear and desire, as mentioned in the Cupid example above, I experience love. Maya, the hypnosis of duality. In the last paragraph, I said nothing substantial can be added to existence. But obviously, an infinite number of things are added to it. I never say I am and go mum. I add objects to it all the time. Actually, I don't add objects because I don't think I'll add some objects to my knowing, my love, my existence. If I know who I am, I will be content to stop at I am, because I am is everything I ever need to be satisfied. But something in me causes me to project my I amness onto objects. So I end up thinking that the objects appearing in my consciousness are me or are mine. The technical term for this power to delude is Maya, the power in consciousness to make the changeless self appear as a changing person. But Maya doesn't add anything substantial. It just deludes the mind with the hypnosis of duality and adds ideas which hide the non dual I am. Not knowing who I am is like saying that my body is not subject to gravity. I may not be aware that gravity dictates the body's every move, but it does. The body, therefore, is just an idea in me. It is not me. It doesn't belong to me because I'm not its author or its owner. And it doesn't exist for me unless I think about it. No objects exist for me unless I think about them. Love relationships almost invariably end because both people don't pay attention to each other. Their attention, which is just a stream of thoughts, goes to someone or something else. Ideas are not real because they come and go. So if I want to get rid of an object, I just need to stop thinking about it, which is often easier said than done. The experience of me, this whole and complete love that I am, is not an objective experience. It is the experience of me, the subject. But when we are under the spell of Maya, we believe that the source of that love bliss lies outside of us, in others, in objects or experiences, which we seek relentlessly, hopelessly. Even if you are in a reasonably happy relationship, it is not the relationship per se that makes you happy. It only seemingly augments the happiness that you already are. You may believe that your happiness depends on the object of your love, but it only ever depends on you, the ever present, unchanging self. The wave and the ocean. Just as our eyes see everything, but cannot be seen without a mirror, we need the right mirror to see that the love that we are is always right where we are, looking through our very own eyes, nowhere else. Everything we see is just a reflection of the love that we are. You are the mirror-like conscious subject out of which the reflected objects arise. The reflection is the wave, and you are the shining ocean. Unfortunately, this fact is not known to most of us in such a way that it neutralizes the desire to seek love from others or to transform our love for others into love for the self, and in so doing learn how to truly love. You can love another person even if you see them as someone other than you, but fear is always a part of dualistic love because fear of loss is always involved. Whereas because non-dual love is you, you cannot lose what you are, even when you die. The only way we can ever love without fear is by knowing who we truly are. Love based on duality seems like love, but it's at best a faint reflection of the love that we are. It is ignorance masquerading as love. That's the end of section number 2 on the self, big S. Then now section number 3, the field of life. The third essential factor in self-inquiry is understanding the field of life, or the field of existence. My true, eternal self witnesses the world, and my finite, psychological small self interacts with it from womb to tomb. The field of life appears as my environment, and the people in it with whom I have karma. It is run by predictable forces and universal laws, which I should understand and to which I should conform if I want to be happy. In the introduction, I mentioned that Vedanta is a science that investigates the material world, the psychology of the individual, and the unseen power of consciousness that creates the cosmos, with the idea of revealing the non-dual love nature of the self. Because Western cosmologies, philosophies, and psychologies lack a transcendental framework, we need 3 Sanskrit terms to explain the nature of the objects appearing in existence. Three controlling energies. The manifest material part of reality, is controlled by the three gunas, which means both qualities and ropes. Creation requires intelligence, matter, and the power to transform matter into the innumerable gross and subtle names and forms that present themselves to our consciousness. From creation's point of view, there are attributes or qualities found in everything. But when we take ourselves into account, they become ropes that bind us tightly to our material side. The guna that binds us to knowledge is called sattva. We can't do anything without knowledge. The guna that binds us to action is called rajas. We're actively transacting from womb to tomb. The guna that provides matter is called tamas and binds us to sleep. If we don't sleep, we'll die. All three of these energies are necessary and useful. They completely define us as living beings, but any one of them can create problems. Since life is nothing but transactions between a conscious subject, which I think of as myself, and the objects that present themselves to me, people, ideas, emotions, perceptions, desires, fears, and situations, which I think of as not me, understanding these energies is necessary for creating successful relationships. It is very difficult to see asphalt, for instance, as an energy, although it is. It is almost impossible to see that it isn't separate from me. We get a little help from quantum mechanics, which points out that life as we know it is energy. But quantum mechanics doesn't help us understand our minds and emotions, which are also only energy. The gunas are the immediate experience of everyone and parcel of everything. The yoga of the three gunas explains how they condition the mind and help us monitor them as they outpicture as our thoughts and feelings so that we can manage the mind. Nothing in life is black and white because it's a mixture of spirit and matter, light and dark, knowledge and ignorance. All the gunas are always present. Although one guna predominates at any time, it is influenced by the other two functioning in the background. It is influenced by the other two functioning in the background. It can only be that way because life itself is nothing but these three energies. The pursuit of material goals demands a different guna set from the pursuit of spiritual goals. This is not to say that guna knowledge does not apply to the pursuit of worldly goals, security, pleasure, virtue, fame, power, etc. It is very useful. The mind is completely under the influence of these three powers until we set it free. Success in any field, worldly or spiritual, is related to the relative portions of the two background energies, to the one dominating the mind at any moment. So if you are a materialist at heart, or have an inner materialist that needs work, don't stop reading. In fact, wherever you find a successful worldly person, the success is due to the confluence of an individual's subjective guna makeup and the guna composition of his or her environment as it interacts with his or her karma stream. The success is usually fortuitous, however, not the result of a conscious application of knowledge, because worldly people are not aware of their unconscious motivations or how the field impacts them. When I am big self-centered, life is manageable and entertaining because I'm no longer pulled hither and thither by these subconscious forces. When I am small self-centered, life is always a problem because the subconscious is in control, and unfortunately, life doesn't know that it is supposed to conform to my likes and dislikes. Life controls the nature of all beings and doesn't see fit to compel my significant other or my children, my friends, or my colleagues to be what I want them to be or to do what I want them to do. If I understand these three factors and how they relate to each other, the negative emotional states that destroy relationships can no longer derail them. Chapter 11 takes up this knowledge in further detail. End of chapter 4. Tomorrow I'll continue with chapter 5, which is on duality. So I hope you enjoyed. Wish you a great day. Bye.